The term migration is mainly used to define regular and periodic movements of the population away from or back to their place of origin. These migrations are of various types. Some may span for an entire lifetime and it happens to be a single migration of an individual. Emigrants leave their country while immigrants enter a country. Migration impacts on both the place left behind and on the place where migrants settle. People have many reasons why they might want to move from one place to another. This is their own experience of life in one place which gives them good reasons to leave it. Often push factors are negative things such as unemployment, crop failure, droughts, flooding, war, poor education opportunities or poor services and amenities. Pull factors on the other hand are the expectations which attract people to the new place. They are usually positive things such as job opportunities, a better standard of living, better education or better health care. Many factors that influence migration are difficult to predict. While social, political and economic developments are exceptionally difficult to predict precisely, judgments can be made based upon current situation. Ecological disruption is easier to preempt as there is a large body of scientific evidence to suggest that this factor will be a cause of concern in the near future. Environmental modeling as well as worsening food and water security in many countries shows that ecological issues are already beginning to present challenges globally. Ecological factors have the potential to become an increasingly significant force influencing migration over the 21st century. For migration to take place, there are usually push factors and pull factors at work. Push factors are the reasons that make someone decide to move. Apart from the earlier factors, the key factors in the present condition for migration are socio-political, economic and ecological factors are the main forces driving migration. Rising communal violence worldwide, often as a result of ethnic or religious intolerance, has led to increased levels of migration. Economic disparity between developing and developed economies encourages the movement of skilled labor from the former to the later. Temporary migration visas allow for an increase in the rate of circular migration. Changes in the ecological environment have the potential to worsen food and water insecurity in various parts of the globe. Limited access to food and water resources may push people to migrate to countries where these resources are more readily available. Migration is becoming a very important subject for the life of cities. Many opportunities and attraction of big cities pull larger numbers of people to big cities. Migration can have positive as well as negative effects on the life of the migrants. So, let us discuss about the positive impact. Unemployment is reduced and people get better job opportunities. Migration helps in improving the quality of life of people. It helps in improve social life of people as they learn about new culture, customs and languages, which helps to improve brotherhood among people. Migration of skilled workers leads to a greater economic growth of the region. Children get better opportunities for higher education. The population density is reduced at the birth rate and the birth rate decreases. Whereas, the negative impacts are the loss of a person from rural areas impact on the level of output and development of rural areas. The influx of workers in urban areas increases competition for the job, houses, school facilities, etc. Having large population puts too much pressure on natural resources, amenities and services. It is difficult for a villager to survive in urban areas because in urban areas there is no natural environment and pure air. They have to pay for each and everything. Migration changes the population of a place, therefore, the distribution of the population is uneven in India. Many migrants are completely illiterate and uneducated. Therefore, they are not only unfit for most jobs, but also lack basic knowledge and life skills. Poverty makes them unable to live a normal and healthy life. Children growing up in poverty have no access to proper nutrition, education or health. Migration increased the slum areas in cities, which increase many problems such as unhygienic conditions, crime, pollution, etc. Sometimes migrants are exploited, and migration is one of the main causes of increasing nuclear family, where children grow up without a wider family circle. The history of humanity and development of human society is underpinned by migration. Migration of people across administrative, political jurisdictions within a country or across countries has been a crucial factor in changes in society. For a better understanding of migration, it is necessary to classify migration according to its types. There are two major types of migration. One, internal migration, which takes place within a country, and two, international migration that takes place across international boundaries. The processes, causes and consequences of internal migration are very different from those in international migration. The former is a response to the socio-economic spatial situation within a country, while the latter is related to international socio-economic and political conditions, especially the immigration and immigration laws and policies of these countries. The relatively permanent movement of people across territorial boundaries is referred to as in-migration and out-migration, or immigration and immigration, when the boundaries crossed are international. The place of in-migration or immigration is called the receiver population, and the place of out-migration or immigration is called the sender population. There are two basic types of migration studied by demographers. One, internal migration. This refers to a change of residence within national boundaries, such as between states, provinces, cities or municipalities. An internal migrant is someone who moves to a different administrative territory. This refers to change of residence over national boundaries. An international migrant is someone who moves to a different country. International migrants are further classified as legal immigrants, illegal immigrants and refugees. Legal immigrants are those who moved with the legal permission of the receiver nation. Illegal migrants are those who moved without legal permission, and refugees are those who crossed an international boundary to escape persecution. ภิ Pillai denote a third classification known as forced migration. Forced migration exists when a person is moved against their will, that is the slaves, or when the move is initiated because of external factors like natural disaster or civil war. The distinction between internal and international migration is crucial because they happen for different reasons. Because structural barriers are more likely to impede the mobility of a potential international migrant, involves more administrative procedures, greater expense and more difficulties associated with obtaining employment, accessing state services, learning a new language and the like. The motivations behind international migration are usually stronger than those behind internal migration. Therefore, the learning objective of this module is an understanding of the various classification of internal and international migration. Internal migration is the migration of people within the country. The characteristics and patterns of a country's internal migration are vital indicators of the peace and process of its development. For instance, the United States is quite literally a nation on the move, and it always has been. On the other hand, population of many developing countries is less mobile. However, the mobility of people within national boundaries is very difficult to measure. For this reason, it is necessary to have a clear understanding of the definition of internal migration. People constantly move from one place to another, and these movements are diverse in nature. The distances covered vary from few kilometers to several kilometers. Moreover, the duration of stay involved in the new location may vary from a few hours to several years. Many movements are casual, such as commuting to and from the place of work, shopping, visiting, and traveling for business or for pleasure, etc. Such movements do not involve a sustained or a permanent change of residence and must therefore be distinguished from migration, which involves a change of place of usual residence, a taking up of life in a new or different place. An operational definition of internal migration is that it is a change of residence from one civil division to another or across the administrative boundary of a civil division. Thus, it may be said that a migrant is a mover from who changes her or his residence from the political area of her usual residence. It is obvious that the civil division as a migration defining criterion lacks uniformity, for divisions vary widely in size, shape and length of the border. This criteria is therefore not suitable when comparisons of migration in different countries are made. However, the United Nations has recommended that the areal unit should be as small as possible. Internal migration therefore is classified based on various criteria which are as described. Within internal migration, there is a four-way classification according to the direction of movements within and between rural and urban areas, which are rural to rural migration, rural to urban migration, urban to rural migration and urban to urban migration. Of these streams, it is rural to urban migration which is the most significant, because it contributes to the transfer of labor force from the traditional agriculture sector to the urbanized industrial sector and is directly linked to urbanization. Rural to urban migration is a response to diverse economic opportunities across space. Income differentials between rural and urban areas is one of the main reasons for this type of migration. Since in developing economies like India, agriculture alone cannot sustain rural livelihood. 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 argues that in India, the rate of job creation and real wage increases in agriculture have slowed down. Moreover, urban areas attract the surplus labor of the countryside, which is characterized by underemployment or unemployment. Factors that pull the high income groups in rural areas are availability of a better social infrastructure, that is education, health, etc., better amenities and the quest for independence from social, cultural, religious and familial shackles. Likewise, urban to urban migration is also related to the concentration of population in large towns and cities, which may be the result of step migration from rural areas to any small towns and then small towns to large cities. However, in many developing countries like India, rural to rural migration is also significant, especially among women who move primarily due to marriage or familial reasons. Each migration stream has distinct premises, causes and consequences. Internal migration stream based on spatial dimensions may be classified into the categories: intra-district migration, that is migration within the district; inter-district migration, that is migration from one district to another within the state; interstate migration, that is migration from one state to another. It is important to note that migration within the district is called short distance migration. Migration within the state across the district is called medium distance migration, and migration across the state boundaries is called long distance migration. Internal migration takes place due to various motivations and reasons, that is with marriage or marriage migration, labor migration or migration of people for work, employment, etc., migration due to natural calamities. So, coming to marriage migration is by far the largest form of migration in India, and it is close to universal for women in rural areas. During the decade 2001 to 2011, around 217.8 million women in India moved to live with their husbands' families on marriage. Most of this has been rural to rural migration, with the women migrating short distances. Coming to labor migration is the migration of people motivated by the need of work or employment. Several economic theories have been proposed to explain labor migration. For example, the neoclassical economic theory has tried to frame motivation for migration in terms of the wage differentials between the origin and destination, as well as the employment conditions and migration cost. The theory also argues that it is the individuals alone who take the decision to migrate. On the other hand, the theory of new economics of labor migration, that is we call it as NELM, considers many conditions along with the wage differentials in the labor market. According to NELM, the family or household rather than the individual is the key decision making unit on migration related matters. It views migration as a household decision taken to minimize risk by diversifying sources of family income or to overcome capital constraints on family production activities. According to census 2011, only 10.2% of India's population was labor migrants during the decade 2001 to 11. This reflects a declining trend of labor migration from the earlier census, when it was 14.4%. Migration due to natural calamities is essentially a kind of forced migration due to extreme environmental events like floods, tsunamis, droughts, etc. Here, migration is classified into two kinds: one, a permanent migration; two, temporary migration. The migrant's intention to permanently change his or her residence distinguishes permanent labor migration from temporary migration. In permanent labor migration, the usual place of residence of the migrants changes and the chances of returning home are weak. In temporary migration, however, migrants continue to remain a usual member of the household and tend to move circularly between the place of origin and destination. In China, instead of the usual place of residence and duration of stay, a household registration system defines whether a person is temporary or permanent labor migrant. The temporary labor migrants are those individuals whose place of residence differs from their place of registration. Permanent migrants, on the other hand, are migrants who have changed their registration to the place of residence. An international migration occurs when people across the political boundary of their home country and enter another. International migration is as old as human history, whether voluntary or forced upon people by famines, conquest and diverse types of persecution. Unfortunately, because of lack of precise information, the size and nature of such migrations are not exactly known. Today, statistics on the international migration are maintained by various countries for their own use, and hence comparison based on such statistics become difficult because of lack of uniformity. International migrants change residence across national boundaries. An international migrant is a person who moves to a different country. Every year, millions of people cross international borders for a variety of reasons. Some do so for business, while some go on vacations. Still, other people leave their homeland with no intention of moving back. No study of migration is complete without a study of international migration. Had an important bearing on the population growth of several countries such as the United States, Canada, Australia and New Zealand, Israel, Singapore, Hong Kong, South Africa and many Latin American countries. International migration can be classified into various types. According to IOM, forced migration is migratory movement in which an element of coercion exists, including threats to life and livelihood, whether arising from natural or man-made causes. For example, movement of refugees and internally displaced persons as well as people displaced by natural or environmental disaster, chemical or nuclear disaster, famine or development projects. This is the fluid movement of people between countries, including temporary or long term movement, which may be beneficial to all involved if occurring voluntarily and is linked to the labor needs of countries of origin and destination. Movement that takes place outside the regulatory norms of the sending, transit and receiving countries. There is no clear or universally accepted definition of irregular migration. From the perspective of the destination countries, it is entry, stay or work in a country without the necessary authorization or documents required under immigration regulations. From the perspective of the sending country, the migration is irregular if, for example, a person crosses an international boundary without a valid passport or travel document or does not fulfill the administrative requirements for the leaving country. However, the term illegal migration is usually applied only to cases of smuggling of migrants and people trafficking. In this module, we gained an understanding of the various kinds of migration. We learned that migration refers to the phenomena of people crossing one administrative or political jurisdiction in a country to another in the same country or another. Migration is as old as human civilization and has been a major contributor of social changes throughout history. For this reason, there is a need to understanding the migration processes and the factors that motivate people to migrate. Thus, internal and international migration is classified into several categories based on various criteria.